A floating worm is a powerful presentation in the spring, even though it will work in the summer and fall as well, but it's something a lot of bass anglers like to do when that weather starts to warm up. Well, it's not spring here yet. I still had ice on the water when I woke up this morning, but it's spring somewhere, and if you're throwing that floating worm, I want to go over this quick little tip that can really change the action of the lure, and I've got to give a shout out to Mike Iaconelli. He showed me this years ago, and it has really made a difference in my floating worm fishing. Most of the time when anglers are fishing a floating worm, they will go ahead and rig it with your traditional Texas rig, right? This weightless Texas rig, make that worm, that plastic nice and straight like we all do. Well, when you're using a floating worm, you can add so much more action if you take that plastic and when you rig it, put a little kink into it like that. Use a little bit more plastic. And you may be thinking, Steve, I'm going to get line twist. Well, I put a swivel a couple feet up the line, okay? So that eliminates the line twist. You don't have to worry about it. And this adds a nice side-to-side sachet. Very similar to a walking bait or a suspending jerk bait. It adds a lot more action to it. When we use the regular Texas rig method where that worm is straight, it still works, okay? It can still work great, but it's definitely more of just a straight pull. Like even when we twitch it, it just kind of darts forward straight. Well, as you can see in this comparison here, when we put that little bit of a kink in the worm, we just get a lot more action to it. Almost kind of looks like a snake, you know, working its way across the surface of the water or just under the water. And one of the ways that I determine, you know, whether I'm going to do this or not depends a lot on the fishing pressure. So a lot of people, a lot of bass anglers have been waiting all winter to get out there, and your lakes are probably seeing more pressure now than any other time of the year. So whether you're a shore angler or fishing from a boat, if you get out there and there's just people all over the place and you're throwing a floating worm, there's a good chance others are as well, but if you put this little bit of a kink in the worm, you're going to present an action that probably not a lot of other anglers are using, okay? It's going to separate you from that crowd, giving the bass something different that they aren't seeing. And we know that the floating worm works great over, you know, submerged brush, around docks, up above vegetation, especially if you've got just a short little part of the water column above this vegetation. A floating worm is just a dynamite rig to use. And hey, if you want to watch a video that goes over the 3 types of plastic that you can use with a floating worm, go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.